So, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Turn 5 podcast, where this week we'll be discussing all of the limited amounts, I guess, of action from the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix weekend. Let's kick it off with just general thoughts of the race in particular. Nia.
To start with, it was exciting. Then for like a big chunk in the middle, it was like nothing's happening. Just watching the DRS train around. And then for the last like 10 laps, it was like, oh, it was like half and half, right?
Ben?
It was great to see the sequel of Hamilton stuck behind Gasly.
Yeah, you've both kind of largely summed up the race as a whole, haven't you? It was the start, then the middle happened, and then Charles Leclerc went Charles Leclerc lines, and yeah, how he continued from that, we don't know. One lucky boy in a way, one unlucky in another, I guess.
Well, so, his own fault, wasn't it? So
yeah, it's risk reward, and in that situation, it was a very big risk for minimal reward.
But it wasn't any reward at all.
I mean, it was to be a little bit closer to Perez and maybe get P2, but we'll come on to that later on. Let's wind the clock back to Friday evening because it's a sprint weekend. So we had quali on a Friday in wet conditions. So quali in the wet, as all of the commentators love to remind us, is conditions that certain drivers like Hamilton and Russell and Norris, because that's the ones they picked, literally I can't even like claim that it's British bias for us, because that's just the ones that they singled out on the media. So British bias for Sky. Shock. But only one of those actually went well. The other two got knocked out in Q2. Okay, unfortunate timing of red flags and such stuff. Well, actually, it was unfortunate timing of the rain for Q2, wasn't it?
Yeah.
After Carlos binned it. Because Carlos binned it again.
He's not had a good weekend.
He's not had a good couple of weekends. I think in the last two races, he's completed one full racing lap in a Grand Prix. Not good numbers.
And he's been 10th at the start of both races. Is that right? I think it's...
You know, honestly, I couldn't tell you.
Or was he... He might have been like 9th in Australia because of Alonso crashing out.
Yeah, that probably sounds about right. Let me check. Yes.
Yeah.
He was. So yeah, not great for Carlos. I mean, this weekend wasn't really his fault. I don't really want to partition blame on anyone. I mean, obviously Daniel's hit him, but at the same time it's wet and the curbs kind of just spat him out. So It's just an unfortunate incident.
There's also a fairly big puddle right on the curb as well.
Yes, which didn't seem to help.
Obviously not going to help at all.
Yeah, but qualifying was sort of the start of the downfall. We had a record number of red flags in a qualifying session, surpassing Baku from a couple of years ago, which was tied with something else. So now 5 red flags is the score to beat, which is a bit nuts. But It was just the conditions. And everyone got their tinfoil hats out because Lando was third, and then Lando caused the final red flag that meant nobody could finish their flying lap. So obviously he did it on purpose, exactly the same way as Charles Leclerc put it in the wall in Monaco on purpose to keep his pole position, even though he couldn't finish, he couldn't actually start the race the next day. Schumacher's a different story because Schumacher actually, could still race.
Just learning from the best, really, isn't he?
Charles tried to make it look more realistic, but overstepped it.
He overdone it. Lando's just like, the front wing can take it, that'd be fine.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if he actually tapped the barrier, to be honest. So many people got so close to that. And then on the off board, looking at the barrier, I never saw it move. And it's like, that's got to be so close. But Bottas also caused the penultimate red flag, which, even though Max lifted a lot going past that section, he still went almost 0.8 of a second quicker, which is it just shows you how changeable the conditions were at that point. So that obviously ended up setting the grid. Max on pole, Charles second, and Sainz and Perez slightly out of position further down the top 10. Sprint race comes around. No sign of rain anywhere. Brand new day. Dry as you like. And my prophecy came true. McLarens are quick in Europe.
There's still 8 temps there.
Yeah, but third fastest team. Faster than the manufacturer team for the engine, which is quite funny. It's like, oh yeah, we'll give you an engine. How are you faster than us? Better car.
There's still part of me that's got like a Bahrain at the back of my head. It's like, it's going to get back there at some point.
Just don't have a heat wave and we'll be fine. This is when we get to like, I'm trying to think. Oh no, if we have like a heat wave at Silverstone and it's like 33 and everyone's just like sweltering and the McLarens are then just going to be really slow.
They did have Saturday as well in the practice. They got hardly, I think they've done like 1 or 2 laps, surely.
Lando completed 6 laps.
Yeah. So both like brake issues.
And then went and it's just like both 5 and 6. And it's like, okay, Lando in 3rd was 5th was arguably the best he was going to manage out of that, with both Perez and Sainz starting behind him. But still, I mean, Sainz coming from 10th was a pretty big charge considering it's only 100 kilometers. But then Danny also working his way through the field and finishing P6 was good. So 5 and 6, I mean, if you'd told anyone in the McLaren garage the Monday after Bahrain, hey, in Imola, after the sprint, you'll be 5th and 6th, I don't think they'd have believed you, even if you like shown them the article from the future.
So the actual sprint race.
Yeah, just show them the whole footage. They're like, how did you Photoshop this? What kind of wizard are you? But no. So yeah, those 2 finishing 5th and 6th in that was probably about as good as you could manage. So I'm hoping with everything staying the same temperature that it will continue.
But they had Mick finish in 10th in the sprint race.
So technically that was his career best qualifying start.
Poor guy.
Also, K-Mag qualifying in 4th was Haas's best result. Then dropped to P8 in the sprint.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's mostly down to the fact that they chose mediums and everyone chose softs around them. I mean, Mick got past Seb, wholesome moments in the interview pen afterwards. But I think that, mix in a slightly less competitive crowd of cars than where Kevin was. You look at the cars around Kevin and you put the fact that he's on a set of mediums and everyone else is on that nice shiny set of softs. He's only really going to go backwards. We also saw a couple of black and white flags for weaving, so yikes. I think you can actually see Kevin's weaving in the YouTube video of the sprint highlights. It's like they're coming through, I think they've just come through Tamburello and they're on the way down to the next chicane, and Kevin's just like, wee. Yeah. It's like, I mean, you could understand that he needs temperature in those tires, but Checo is literally right behind him. So it's not really the place to be doing that. So, I mean, Haas had an okay weekend. Wasn't their best, wasn't their worst, so not the end of the world. A couple more points. Yeah, I mean, this year is going tenfold better than last year for them. Yes. Easy. I mean, Kevin got points in both the sprint and in the race, so decent performance. Another decent performance of the weekend, Bottas. Points in both sprint and the race. When did he qualify? Because he wasn't that high up, was it? Oh, 8th. There we go. So qualified 8th, finished the sprint in 7th, and finished the race in 5th. So 12 points over the weekend, which is a good chunk. The unexpected, I want to say, performance that I think very much flew under the radar in terms of broadcast coverage was the fact that Aston Martin got a double points finish.
Nice.
Yeah. I didn't realize it until I looked at the results afterwards, but Lance Stroll finished 10th and Sebastian finished 8th. Okay. So 5 points for the team.
Harry is some sort of wizard.
Yeah.
From last week.
I mean, how he's pulled that one out of the bag, God only knows. But might have to get back to him on that one. Hey, yeah. What's your odds for Miami? Who's going to do well? But 5 points for them moves them off the bottom of the table because they were the only team that hadn't scored any points at that moment in time. Because obviously Albon nicked that point in Australia, but now they are, I believe they're 9th, but it's better than 10th.
They're behind Haas in front of Williams.
Yeah, so I feel like as sad as it is, I think the scrap for last is between Aston and Williams.
Yeah. But the only thing is, I can't see Williams do what Aston Martin done this weekend. Yeah,
I think for Williams to score more points is going to need more Australias where Albon just magics out 56 laps on a set of tires. It's tricky one. But then again, we're yet to see any real major developments from the teams. So I think Spain is probably where we're going to start to see big changes. I know some changes have been mooted to arrive in Miami. What those will end up being, don't know. Who they'll end up being for. It's rumored to be Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes. Wouldn't surprise me, considering the big three. Even though Mercedes have basically done an Arsenal and was the big three and is now in the midfield.
Or Manchester United.
Also true. Both equally valid. It's just hoping they don't do an Everton and get relegated. Sad Frank Lampard noises. I say that as a massive Frank Lampard fan.
There's no problem with that.
There is a problem because he's going to go down and he's going to lose his job. What else have we got? I mean, Aston Martin doing bits, yeah. I mean, DRS trains very much became a thing, but we also didn't have DRS, so they were just trains. Right?
Yeah.
They were trained for like half of it, and then when DRS came in, they were like, "Yep, let's carry on as we were doing, just faster."
Yeah, it's like the whole time it was happening, it's Crotty is like, it's a DRS train, and he's like, oh wait, there's no DRS.
What I did find interesting though was that even when DRS was enabled, Alex Albon without DRS was able to keep both Pierre Gasly and Lewis Hamilton behind him, which I think is quite impressive. Obviously shows the difference in the cars lower down the field compared to the cars above them, because look at the overtakes that Carlos and Perez made when they were coming through in the sprint with the DRS. They were just miles quicker. And then you look at Albon and Gasly, and it's like Gasly struggling to get alongside him. So there's some big differences there that I think people are going to need to look to exploit, I guess. I mean, nothing's been protested yet. That's the point. We haven't really seen the first big protest of the season, have we?
Or Haas.
Yeah, but that hasn't gone formal.
Yeah.
It's not been a formalized review.
They're just suggesting they're going to do a review or something, or investigate. Telling the FIA they need to.
It's all because Haas has an office at Maranello next to Ferrari's HQ, and because Haas are cheapskates and can't afford their own wind tunnel, they use Ferraris. Obviously,
isn't the Haas thing in Maranello in the Ferrari thing?
They have their own building.
Oh, okay. I thought it was actually in the Ferrari building.
No. They have their own building that they have their own special access to, so none of the Ferrari people can get in. It's just they share a wind tunnel, but
Would the Ferrari people really want to get into it?
I mean, look at last year. Did they really care? They might now. They think, hey, they're actually doing all right. You got any ideas for us? How can we make our car even better? But no, I think Gunter said it best when you have to work. He said you have to work hard for envy. Pity comes free. So, fair play. Stick it to him. We know Gunther will. That's the best thing about him. He won't take it lying down. He will fight his corner, and he won't release a scary Lawrence Stroll video. They are dragging our name through the mud. Won't be like that. It'll just be beeps. All it'll be. That's an unfortunate coincidence. Both non-finishers in the race were Spanish. Conspiracy theory time. That year that Max never finished a race in Italy? Are we about to see a year where no Spaniard finishes a race in Italy? Bad news for Ferrari. Bad news for Alpine. Actually, that's the point. Alonso's side pod exploded.
Yeah.
In a similar way to Ocon's in Bahrain, but that was a different spec. That was like they were testing a new spec of side pod, and it just went and disappeared. But this time, it was not just a design fault.
Yeah, it was pretty much from previous damage, wasn't it?
Yeah, so Mick got a bit squirrely on the exit of turn 3, like the midsection of Tamburello, and tapped him.
It was actually just after Daniel and Carlos went off, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then tapped him, and then a few laps later, as Lewis is alongside him, which was a great angle to see because it really showed it. Because I don't think any of his own onboards would have shown it in the same way. It just disintegrated and went. Obviously, it wasn't on the racing line because we never saw it again. Even though they just like it got so dull that a little piece fell off Latifi's car and zoom in, enhance. It was like, I don't know, a couple inches at most. It looked like a big washer, to be honest. But I don't know how an F1 car works. It goes zoom, and I enjoy it. That's all it needs. I mean, it was probably a weekend to forget in general for Alpine, with Ocon finishing outside the points anyway.
Yeah, he got a unsafe release as well.
Yeah. Oh my God, Ted hyping that up. There's been a crash in the pit lane.
Yeah.
They tapped. They tapped. As much as I love you, Ted, that's not a crash. I'm expecting it to cut to like.
Yeah, I was waiting for like a wheel to be flying down the pit lane.
I was waiting for it to cut to just a scene like Monza last year where a car's on top of another. That's kind of what I was waiting for. Just
and then to see all the cars
inexplicable carnage.
And then you see all the cars, like Imola last year with Russell and Bottas, like another one of that. Instead, you see all the cars come out the pit lane, like, gosh.
Yes. I mean, we almost got a repeat of Bottas versus George. Oh, I was willing Bottas on. I will not lie. I wanted 2.0 of that. But I mean, speaking of Bottas and George, there were teams that definitely had very polarized luck in either half of the garage, or just weekends in general, not necessarily luck. Ferrari, obviously, more on the luck end of the scale, with Carlos getting slowly punted off the corner. And then Charles deciding to take flight. Not a great weekend. Was looking promising, third and fourth, second and fourth in the sprint. You know, there was promise there, but I guess, you know, sometimes you ride your luck, sometimes you don't. Mercedes, very much not the luck end of the scales. George gaining 5 places on the opening lap casually, and then just cruising round like 6 to 8 seconds behind Lando to get a nice cushy P4. Is the only driver on the grid to finish P5 or higher in every race so far this season, which in that Mercedes, highly commendable, compared to Lewis being stuck behind Gasly for eternity and then receiving an apology from Toto about receiving an undrivable car. If it's so undrivable, why is one of them in P4? I will refer to my comments in previous episodes of George is used to driving bad cars, therefore George can drive bad cars well. Lewis is not used to driving bad cars. He's used to driving the best cars, therefore he can't drive bad cars.
Or can Lewis just not drive?
Hot take of the day. Lewis is washed.
His career is
Max Verstappen Twitter enters the chat.
Michael Massey ended Hamilton's career.
Facts. Alfa Romeo also had a bit of a mixed one. Joe making a mistake in the sprint, costing him. That was a new gearbox, wasn't it? Because he started from the pit lane, so I kind of assumed that they gave him a new gearbox. I didn't actually check that. Oops. Should have done my homework. Okay, there we go. Zhou was required to start from the pit lane after car was modified whilst under hypothermic conditions. Doesn't confirm if he had a new gearbox, but it was modified. Oh yeah, okay. So Zhou did use a new gearbox as well. So
Pit lane start for you.
well, I mean, he had to start at the pit lane anyway, so they might as well have just taken the new gearbox and basically didn't get a penalty for it. So fair enough, you know.
I think isn't gearbox like 5 place anyway.
Yeah, it's a 5 place penalty, but you have to go 6 races before you can change it normally. So this is round 4, so a bit early. It's only done half of its allotted usage, I guess, but they've got away with it, really. Other teams, Haas obviously had a bit of a up and down. Kevin doing pretty well, Mick not having a great time of it. Alpha Tauri, Yuki got points. Gasly was stuck behind Albon.
Yeah, they didn't look good in the rain.
No. Disappointing at their home circuit, considering it's literally like 10 miles from the factory. And McLaren, obviously, Danny not having a great time and Lando on the podium. So, yeah, it was a very 50-50 weekend. So, DRS did not come on for ages. Thoughts?
What was the reason? Like, was there just any reason it didn't come on? Because the part it looked dry enough.
Mm.
For like 5 or so laps, or maybe even more, before it came on. It was like there was a decent enough dry patch for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you go back to last year and we had DRS while we were still on intermediates.
Yeah, and then I know it's kind of weird.
Messy.
I feel like at the point they put on DRS, it was sort of like too late to change anything at all because DRS came on and then it still was all a bit samey still.
Yeah.
And then
I think
earlier on in the race, they could have put it on. But you're sort of like, oh, that would help them, and them. But then it's like always bound to at a point where DRS comes on. It'll always.
Personally, I think like 5 or 10 laps after they'd pitted for slicks was when they should have done it. Because the drivers have proven that the conditions are safe enough that they can absolutely hoon it round and still, you know, dip a tire into the damp patch to try and have a look at a move. But obviously without the assistance, they weren't able to make it stick. But, you know, the drivers at that point have proven that conditions were fine, essentially. So in my opinion, that was when DRS should have come on. There was a very evident dry line. It was like 20, 25 laps after they'd all pitted.
Yeah.
It was very late in the day.
It must have been around, is it like 30s, mid-30s?
I think it was slightly later than that.
Later.
Early 40s was my gut, but I can't remember off the top of my head exactly when it was.
I remember being at like lap 12 and crofting that being like, they could turn DRS on now.
Yeah, no. They didn't pit until like lap 19. So
yeah.
I think lap like 25 would have been fine. 30 if you wanted to be on the safe side. Anything later than that is just a ball ache now.
They sort of just forgot about it.
Yeah. Which button is it?
Can't find it.
It's the big one. It's green and it has DRS on it.
That's also the thing that happened at like the changeable phase is Perez just sent it on Leclerc. I did not expect that one, but I was like, Leclerc's on the dry line. Perez is just gonna like have to sit behind. I just see him go white out onto like the wet stuff of the track. Just absolutely send it on him.
Why not? I mean, both
Why
Ferraris didn't get a great start, and then Perez was just like, "Thanks, bye." And then at the end with Ferrari and pitting Charles, I was looking at the timing and I was like, "That's really close to Lando. They're going to come out. They're going to come up behind. They're behind Lando."
At
And
that point, I was like, "Park the bus."
at that point, I was just like, "Do I crack out the old Ferrari strategists meme?"
Yeah.
Of clowns and Pepes, because that didn't make any sense to me. I mean, he then got past Lando with incredible ease. Fine, the new tires were working, and Lando was just trying to protect his because they were all doing like 40-something lap stints on a set of mediums, which is something I'll come back to in a minute. I want to talk about Danny. But, obviously Charles on the soft, more grip going, but then yeeted into the stratosphere, into the wall, back into the pits, and down into, I think he went down to 8th or 9th, and then climbed his way back up to 6th.
Yeah.
So, yeah, personally, I think that was a bit unnecessary. I think they could have just stuck it out and then...
Yeah, they could have just waited
It was a guaranteed P3.
Like, really, if Ferrari just left it another, probably even one lap.
I mean, even if they just left him out
ahead of Lando.
If they just left him on the mediums, Lando wasn't going to catch him. Lando was like 20 seconds behind.
Everyone was in like the same boat. They all were on the mediums, and they put on relatively the same time. So like, it wasn't going to make much difference. But... Yeah,
the only person that tried anything different was Danny, who went onto the hards, which obviously didn't work because he finished back of the pack. But he was behind Hamilton anyway. So yeah, in that essence, it was, he was stuck behind Albon, Gasly, and Hamilton. So they tried something different by going onto the hards, and it was basically nothing gained, nothing ventured,
Yeah, he also had damage.
Yeah, he got punted up.
Hitting him. Yeah,
it was diffuser damage. So it's quite an important car with these, quite an important part of the car with the new ground effect system. So, yeah, I'd imagine that was a reasonably substantial loss of downforce in that section of the car, just by virtue of how they work now. But, obviously, I think it was probably just too cold, too damp for the hards to actually go. But at the same time, everyone was very much on edge with I heard like 5 different team radios of like, okay, so we need to look after the front right, and we've got to do it for the next 40 laps. We're trying to go to the end on these. Good luck, have fun. So I think Seb's race engineer was the only one that was like, yeah, I think you're doing a good job of this so far. Everyone else was like, okay, we need to protect the front right more. So obviously when Charles pitted, that created the window. So then Sergio pitted, and then Max pitted. So, they didn't have any issues with their tires, and Max got the fastest lap, unsurprisingly. And that was about the race, I think, wasn't it? It was Red Bull's first 1-2 since Malaysia 2016.
It's crazy.
It is weird to think that. Max has finished in like the top 2 since in like the last 35 races, except for Hungary. And obviously where he hasn't finished, but when he's finished a race, he's been in the top 2, which is absolutely insane consistency. So yeah, I feel like that doesn't get enough credit, to be honest, because everyone's like, oh yeah, he's average at best. It's like, you don't finish first or second, even when you have like the second best car on the grid, with that frequently. If you have the second best car on the grid, sometimes you're looking at best position of third because the other 2 are just better than you. But he was always first or second. So the stats speak for themselves, so they say. Speaking of stats, Lewis Hamilton should quit because he's damaging his. Those percentages are slowly coming down now. And it's not looking good compared to his teammate, especially when you get lapped by your rival 4 months ago. Some savage TV graphics coming out there with Max Hamilton gap 77 seconds.
Absolutely.
Lol. So yeah. Yikes. But is what is.
Yeah, build a better car.
Exactly. Yeah, basically. They've gone down a development hole and it's a pretty shallow one. Ferrari have gone down a development hole and found a great deal of gold. So, yeah. I'll be interested to see if Mercedes bring upgrades and they don't work the way they expect them to, at what point they abandon this season and solely focus on correcting it for next year. Like, I know it's early, like we're only 4 races into a 23 race calendar, but Lewis has pretty much already written off this year.
Yeah, he said they won't win the championship.
Yeah.
If they bring in like 2 or 3 more sets of upgrades and none of them work, then they're like, right, okay, something's not right here.
Yeah, if you look, I reckon you'd be looking around Hungary.
Yeah, like just
because then they can
Yeah.
just Well, I mean, I was going to say they could use the factory shutdown over the summer break as well, but they could use some of the summer break. But I mean, they're already 47 points behind Ferrari in the constructors. So yeah, that's a long way.
And they have to gain up about 1.5 seconds or something. Probably.
Yeah, and the rest. So yeah, well, I mean, 4 races in, 2 Ferrari wins, 2 Red Bull wins, 2 Charles Leclerc wins, 2 Max Verstappen wins, to be more precise.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not complaining if it carries on like this. This is great. But at the same time, at what point do we think someone's going to make the killing blow? Is it going to be an engine failure killing blow, or is it going to be a Ferrari have suddenly brought an upgrade that makes them 9 seconds a lap faster?
It'd be nice to have just one more team up there.
Yeah,
a certain team battle.
Certain orange.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's the cold temperatures of Europe. They will be back with a vengeance.
Yeah, but it's getting towards summer more and more. So
it's fine. It's fine.
Nothing to worry about.
That gives them a bit more time, and the temperature changes are only incremental. You know, it's not as drastic as going from Spain to the desert. You're right.
Is it the 4th race in a row in Italy where McLaren have got a podium? This was Imola after Monza.
Oh, Monza 2020.
Yeah.
Was there a race after?
Well, yeah. Wait, where was Mugello though? When was Mugello in that list of things?
Mugello was before.
I can't remember, but they've had 4 podiums.
There's definitely 3 in a row.
Let's have a look.
Yeah,
Tuscany. It's earlier. Oh no, Italy, then Tuscany. Okay, so yeah.
So it's 3 in a row.
Yeah.
It's the first time Lando has scored podiums at successive races at the same venue.
Yeah, but that's a bit of a cop-out because there's like Austria, but it's Styrian Grand Prix.
Yeah, but he still didn't get successive podiums. But like just 2 podiums in a row at Imola, that's not bad going. Predictions. We haven't covered those. Genius. Right.
I don't think anyone's a genius this week. From Harry Benjamin.
Yeah, so should we cover let's do the social media ones first because they did well. Well, one of them did well. So there was a tie for second place, and then there was a winner. So in joint second is Ardan and Mason, who both got 2 points. Ardan got his point for saying that Verstappen would win the sprint and got a point for putting Verstappen on the podium. And Mason got his 2 points for putting both Verstappen and Perez on the podium. But KR45 got 6 points for putting Perez on the podium, Max on the podium in the right place, and saying that Max would qualify on pole and win the sprint. So that's 6 points, which is better than
I'm a Max fan.
Yeah, but it's better than everyone else this week. So in
being biased works.
yeah, did this week. In joint third is Chris, Nia, myself, and Harry with 1 point. All of them. Actually, no. Chris put Verstappen on the podium. Nia put Perez on the podium. I put Verstappen on the podium. And Ben put Perez on the podium. So there's mixed faith there. In second...
What was my prediction? Was it Leclerc, Sainz, Perez?
No, Leclerc, Russell, Perez.
Oh dear. I was like, what, 10 seconds off?
Off Lando, yeah.
10 seconds off the podium.
Sonia came second with 2 points for putting both Verstappen and Perez on the podium. And in first place is Ben with 4 points.
Perez, the genius.
For Perez finishing second and Verstappen finishing third. You put him third, but he finished first. So 1 point for that. You also got your bold prediction correct by saying all Red Bull and AlphaTauri cars would finish the race. They did. Chris did not score any points for that because he said that Hamilton would outscore Russell.
Well, you see where that problem's gone then, don't you?
Womp womp. Nia, I crossed yours out very early in the weekend because you said Mick would get to Q3 and score points. He did neither. It's painful for me as well, but you said it. So please stop jinxing my boy. Thank you.
I think I should have gone with the other one because I had something to do with Aston Martins and points for now.
I said both McLaren in the top 6. I'm giving myself half a point because they did in the sprint. Perfect. Good. Moving on. And Harry said that Joe would lead half the race.
Nowhere near.
No. Sorry, mate, but no. Lap down showdown. Ben, you got the amount of laps down correct. Congratulations. Nia, you came last. You got nothing. You got nothing right. I got the number of laps down correct. Harry got the number of laps down correct. And Chris got the number of laps down correct and was closest to the actual lap, which was 26. He said 28. And nobody got the driver right because it was Mick. And most of us said Latifi. Ben said Stroll and Chris said Vettel.
Having a agenda against Lance Stroll.
I rate that. Shall we invite him on?
Yeah, Daddy's cash.
So
have all of us to like with the opposite fixture is just a Lance Stroll from Monaco. The
replay meme.
Yeah.
Just before he talks every time.
What's happened? We need to know. Oh God. I think we'd be getting a very strongly worded letter from Aston Martin representatives.
You get a video from Lawrence.
Probably a cease and desist.
Mudded.
Probably get a cease and desist and our podcast would be shut down before we even got out of the ground. So on that fun
Lawrence
note,
Stroll taken.
Lawrence Stroll buys out the Turn 5 podcast. We have to run ads for him. So that's all of this week's F1 action. Next week, because we don't have F1 this weekend, we will be covering the Formula 2 and Formula 3 action from this week just gone, because there was slightly more chaos thanks to the weather. And we'll also be making our Miami predictions and covering any big news that comes out between now and then. There's always something. So until next time, thank you for listening and or watching, and goodbye.